Okay, I'm only gonna go so deep.
But you can go deeper, but if you do use any, what are they called, like, acronyms, please tell us what they are.
I will spell anything out. I'll also say that I'm more of a numbers person than anything else. I'd like to give the like big picture context before we go deeper on the tech side. These really powerful stories that we're hearing about how life is experienced by people who are justice impacted, how education and these tools have impacted them. I want to zoom up just so we can see the context of it. There are 5 million people in the United States currently under justice supervision. About 2 million of those people are currently incarcerated. We know that in 3 years or so after re-entering society, about half those people become incarcerated again. We know that that number unofficially isn't disclosed, but usually goes up to about 80% when you look out 7 or 8 years as we look further into the future. So we have a very large population, and if you're going to want to look at intersections of equity and these challenges, it's probably completely unavoidable to address issues of equity without addressing the population that's being impacted by the justice system on this scale. If they're not personally impacted, it's probably their family. And so just to set the numbers here of how large of a problem this is, we can all celebrate the way technology has leaped forward how we do education, how we get education to people. Speaking specifically of Google Classroom and NetSuite, 191 children and teachers are using this tool, 191 million, apologize, important piece there. 191 million people are using this platform to get access to education tools that were never conceivable only 20 years ago when I was in education. But for some people, that's a big leap of being left behind, who didn't maybe grow up with a computer in their house, or if they did, they didn't have personal access to it in the way that I did as a child. So it's a huge gap. It's a very large number of people. And it's one that we often aren't talking about or addressing the way that we should. Kyle did a phenomenal job sharing the story in Michigan. I think what might be lost on this audience, and I want everyone to understand here, is that this is the best state in the country for this. This is as good as it gets, and they're doing phenomenal things. But of those 5 million people, many have a lot less access to tools. Michigan is leading the charge and doing something very innovative. Freddie with the STEM Alliance is doing something extremely innovative for our detained youth. I'm sorry, I'm trying my best. I don't want to eat the microphone. Can I trade with you? Your voice is phenomenal.
Let's see.
Is this better?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to push a little more too and try to slow down. So the challenge we were presented with is how do we take this tool that is extremely collaborative, built for sharing and access, simultaneously editing documents together, right? Working on a budget with someone who's living in a different town or country, writing a document with your fellow students while being in a different place. How do we take a tool that was designed around collaboration and then turn that upside down and make it the most secure tool so that it can be deployed in an environment where fear and uncertainty and doubt about how will this make security risk is the top narrative and concern of the decision makers. This wouldn't have been possible without Google personally investing in it and making changes to the tool with Kyle's leadership in Michigan advocating for those changes to make it specifically designed for this use case. So it's not taking the tools that you and I use and just deploying them that way. It's really configuring them in a special way that is specifically designed to be in a highly secure environment. That's about as deep on the technology as I want to go, to be honest with you, but it allows us to pick specific materials and online tools and give them to specific individuals in a very secure way.
Thank you. I think what I want to ask is maybe another question to you, Ben, if possible, so keep the mic close. Because I do like talking about technology, and I do think it's important in the room for us to be able to advocate as we're having conversations. And if we don't really understand what's possible in regard to the technology, we can't feel confident in our conversations with people about the technology. So I'm just curious if you could describe, like give us an example of a use case, like I don't know, I heard someone once describe that you can set up who you email directly, and you can only email that person. So is there any use cases you could give us, just so as we're thinking about the kinds of programming and the kinds of use cases as we're out in the world, that would be super helpful.
The email one is not the first one that we do. We're still exploring how to make email. There's ways to do it, but it's not the starting point. Things like writing a document and being able to have that document reviewed by your educator and sharing that material with your educator is just a really basic starting point that can allow us to see where skills are at before they started and see the advancement of that skill. A big use case that I'd also want to highlight is, let's say that document was your resume or was your certification passing classes, like a welding class, and you have this document on your Google Drive, which that's where I keep my stuff, right? And about 1 billion of other people keep their stuff. After being incarcerated, they can transition that into a civilian account, just like mine. So all of those documents that they would have had access to or worked on while they were incarcerated are still at their fingertips, and they know how to access them. That has a huge impact on when you show up to court and you need to have documents that you were previously working on while incarcerated. It has a huge impact on demonstrating your capabilities and sharing your certifications with those who need to see them. So hopefully that example is helpful for you.
Great, terrific, thank you. All right, I don't mean to put you on the spot, Freddie, but I was so inspired when you talked about how you became a trainer without, maybe what you thought were your own digital skills. And I think that really speaks to, I believe, and I know organizationally, and probably everybody in this room shares the belief that all people can be successful with technology. So I'd love it if you could just share a little bit more about your journey, maybe as someone who felt less confident with your skills to becoming, an expert and a leader in this.
Well, at that point, my digital skills were limited to who was the closest family member that I could contact, because it was either my nieces, my cousins. Everybody was helping with everything, which was super frustrating. I had no experience with Google, very limited experience with Microsoft, maybe when I was back in junior high school. But I had to learn the systems on my own. So the way the curriculum is based with the STEM Alliance actually is very basic. So I kind of took the course myself various times to teach myself the necessary skills so I can kind of transfer that, because before I was doing this particular program, I was educating in the field, adults that were for basic digital needs. So I was learning as I was teaching, and that's kind of how my journey starts.
Excellent. Thank you. All right, I think I'm gonna maybe ask one or two more questions. I'm sure there's tons of questions from all of you in the room. But I wondered if anybody could maybe share a success story of somebody that they've worked with that's been impacted by the work that you're doing. Or, I know Lucinda, if you could share, some stories of women that you've worked with that have been able to, find their confidence, whether it's digital skills or just in general after coming back out and reintegrating into, this digital economy that we all live in. So I just would love to hear some stories of people that you've worked with and how you've had some impact in their lives.
One particular story stands out for me, a young Latina woman, and the reason why I bring it up is because the minority piece is important when we also talk about digital equity. And so she had a history of going in and out of the system because she had a lack of skills and a lack of skill sets, which led her into unfortunate relationships and doing things that she shouldn't have been doing, but without proper parenting and family support, she fell to the streets. So her life in and out of prison with small, what we call bids, could be 6 months, you go back in 3 months. And so when she came to us to Activate Your Life, we helped her with one rebranding and a full makeover. Let's clean up your social media. What you have up there is not going to work. I know you had fun at the club, but we got to take it down. The next thing we did was we worked with a few organizations like Dress for Success and this other organization, Closet, and got her some suits. This is how you wear a suit, this is shoes. And then we worked on her communication and having confidence in public speaking. Although she didn't want to be a public speaker, it's key to be able to articulate the job role you want and have confidence in it, especially with a colorful background. So with that, then the next phase for us was to work on her confidence and her skill sets. What are some of the things that you know how to do? What are some of the things that you like to do? One thing, when you are returning into society, no one talks to you about, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to be when you're free, right? And so no one is looking at you as a plan. They're looking at, hey, make sure you stay off drugs. Hey, make sure you stay off the streets. And so we focused on what are your goals, and we crafted a vision board for her to go after each goal. One of them was for her to go back to school. She now, from someone who had no high school education, was able to get her GED. She graduated from college. She was able to take online colleges at Monroe, and Mercy College is another college that works well. And then from there, just to fast track, she's now a payroll director, making over 6 figures and haven't been in prison, and she's raising a family. She now has her own home, you know, and just doing phenomenal. But it took time and it took years So one thing is having a parole officer where they often feel as if that's just an adult babysitter, to being placed with someone who is a mentor to help guide you. And that's one of the things that we've seen. There was a big need, lining her up with a mentor, and now she's in accounting and payroll directing. And I mean, she tried to juggle 2 remote 6-figure jobs during the pandemic. I said, you go, girl, treat me to lunch. She is doing phenomenal, and I wish I was trying to get her to come with me here, and she's so shy. She's like, no, I'm gonna work. But that's one of the stories of what reentry really looks like when you're able to take off the numbers that they're given and having her embrace her needs.
Anybody else want to go? Okay, we'll go Freddie and then Kyle.
Go for it.
So one case in particular stands out to me. So one of the young men I was working with recently at Woodfield at the project, he was recently released, but I knew from working with him that he did get to earn his high school diploma while he was on the outside, but he was one of those, you know, kids that just seemed to just find trouble, or trouble found him. However, the program kind of opened his eyes to, because he was one of the ones in particular that surprised me, given the level of his education, that he still didn't know how to work the Google Workspace. He still didn't know how to use these basic applications. And it opened his eyes, because